The fire didn't start with a roar. Tragedies rarely announce themselves like that. Instead, it began as a whisper of smoke curling beneath a bedroom door, a quiet warning ignored in the calm hum of a Sunday afternoon. A young girl, no more than 9, sat cross-legged on her carpet, braiding her doll's hair while sunlight poured through floral curtains. In her world, danger did not exist. Monsters lived under beds, not inside circuit wiring buried behind walls. Her mother downstairs hummed to gospel on the radio. A pot simmered on the stove. Everything felt ordinary, safe, until it wasn't. It was the smell she noticed first. Not quite cooking, not quite burning. Something unfamiliar and wrong. The doll slipped from her hands. She stood, walked to the door, reached out, and as soon as her fingers brushed the knob, she felt it. Heat. Violent heat. Alive and hungry. Then came the crackle. Then the scream, her mother's voice, terror-shaped and raw. Then the wall of smoke rolling under the door like a living shadow. There is a kind of fear only a child knows. The moment innocence dies and survival takes its place. She did not know the science of fire, but instinct roared louder than flames. Run. She covered her mouth with a blanket, remembering a school safety drill she once giggled through. Crawling, coughing, crying, she moved. A child fighting a disaster built for adults. She reached the window and pushed, but it did not budge. Old locks, sealed tight. The kind of windows landlords never change because nothing bad ever happens. Until it does. Glass rattled. Smoke swallowed the room whole. The oxygen turned thin and sharp. She beat the window with her tiny fists, desperate, delirious, until the world outside came alive with pounding footsteps and neighbors yelling her name. "Jump! We've got you!" voices cried. A blanket stretched below like a fragile promise. She looked down, trembling. It felt like miles. The room behind her hissed, alive with orange teeth and roaring breath. Fire grows quickly and childhood ends even faster. She jumped. Pain exploded through bone and skin. But she survived. Barely. Her mother didn't. And on that day, in that broken neighborhood where tragedy burned through walls faster than authorities responded, something else was ignited inside that little girl, a fire that never went out, a purpose carved from trauma. She spent months wrapped in bandages, skin grafts stinging, nightmares more real than waking. Journalists came. Politicians spoke in careful lines. Insurance forms piled up, and when the world moved on, she remained in a hospital bed, staring at ceiling tiles, learning to walk again, learning to breathe again, learning what loss really costs. She was told she was lucky, but she did not feel lucky. She felt responsible because children often do. Why didn't she smell the fire sooner? Why couldn't she open the window? Why didn't help come faster? Those questions became fuel. Fuel became mission, and mission became history. Years passed. Bones healed. Scars settled into her skin like permanent reminders of a war she never enlisted in. She studied fire codes, building standards, emergency response times. She learned what adults failed to protect her from. The cracks in safety system society quietly tolerated until lives fell through them, and she made herself a promise. No other child will jump from a window because adults failed them. What began as one voice, shaky, young, trembling with grief, grew into a roar. Town halls, city meetings, newspaper columns. She petitioned lawmakers before she could vote for them. She dragged bureaucrats into uncomfortable truths. She demanded stronger fire escape standards, mandatory window egress checks, safer electrical systems in low-income housing, and faster emergency response protocols. She became relentless, not because she wanted recognition, but because she remembered smoke rising beneath a bedroom door and how close she came to never growing up at all. People listened. Some resisted. Progress always has enemies. But the girl who once jumped to survive now climbed, step by grueling step, toward change. And decades later, when building codes strengthened, windows changed, alarms became louder, and apartments across her country adopted new fire safety laws, it was because a child who once crawled through smoke refused to let her story end in flames. But her journey didn't stop there. Fame was never the reward. The real battle began in the boardrooms, courtrooms, and policy halls, where lives are quietly decided by those who never see burning houses, only budgets. This is not just the story of survival. It is the story of a girl who carried her scars into the world and used them as armor. A girl who lost everything in one blaze and used the ashes to rebuild safety for millions. She did not become a victim. She became a blueprint, and the world is safer because she lived. But change never comes without a price. When she first walked into a legislative hall, she was not a lobbyist, not a politician, not a lawyer. She was a young woman with visible scars and invisible ones that ran deeper. Her gait was uneven from the jump. Her voice sometimes cracked, a reminder of weeks breathing through smoke-damaged lungs. But her resolve? Unbreakable. They called her the girl who survived the flames, but she knew she was more than survival. She was the spark that would burn down complacency. She stood behind a podium, palms shaking. The room felt cold, indifferent. Lawmakers shuffled papers. Cameras blinked like impatient eyes. She inhaled slowly, remembering the smell of smoke, the sound of crackling wood, the moment gravity took her body from window to earth. "I am not here because I was unlucky," she began, voice trembling but true. "I am here because hundreds of thousands of children still live in buildings designed to fail them." Silence spread like wildfire. No one could look away. She didn't tell a story for sympathy. She delivered data like oxygen. 40% of fatal residential fires happened in low-income or neglected housing. Many homes still lacked secure escape routes. Old wiring stayed legal in too many buildings because upgrades cost too much. Children were still dying in homes with sealed windows and blocked fire exits. Her scars were not ornaments, they were evidence. Her voice was not emotion, it was indictment. One senator cleared his throat and spoke, trying to soften the blow. "Miss, these are complex issues. Funding, logistics, building owners. This isn't simple." She leaned forward. "It was simple when the fire came," she said. "It didn't ask for a budget. It didn't wait for a committee meeting. It simply burned, gasps, camera shutters." A pause heavy enough to feel like gravity itself leaned forward to listen. They agreed to form a commission. Not a law, not yet, but a step. And steps matter, even when they feel too slow for someone. Who once ran through smoke on her knees. She became the face of reform, interviews, community, forums, documentaries. The nation watched a survivor transform into a strategist, but progress came with enemies. Real estate lobbyists pushed back. Developers whispered. Politicians warned her not to push too hard. They called her dramatic, emotional, naive. One housing developer even sneered on live TV. "Fires are tragedies, but you can't legislate emotion." She did not flinch. "Emotion didn't kill my mother. Neglect did," the audience erupted. And slowly, quietly, politicians realized she wasn't going away because she wasn't fighting for applause. She was fighting for the child she once had been, for the mother who never made it out. The movement spread. Cities held emergency safety audits. Fire departments endorsed her proposals. Mothers in neglected neighborhoods rallied in her name. People who never had a voice suddenly had a microphone, and as her cause grew, so did the threats, angry letters. Rumors planted online, developers questioning her motives. A newspaper headline once read, "Tragedy isn't a policy, fire girl overreaches." She clipped it out and taped it above her desk. A reminder, if powerful people were uncomfortable, she was on the right path. And then, one winter evening, the call came. A major city council had approved her fire escape standards. Mandatory window egress checks, updated wiring codes for old rental buildings, penalties for landlords who ignored fire hazards, emergency exit enforcement. It was not the end, it was a beginning. A template cities across the nation soon echoed. She attended the signing ceremony. Flashbulbs popped. Reporters leaned in. She held the pen after the mayor and pressed her fingers against the document. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from fulfillment. Her mother's memory stood beside her in that moment. Not as a ghost, but as legacy, as fuel. She didn't smile for cameras. She closed her eyes and whispered a promise to the little girl she once was. You didn't jump for nothing. But heroism rarely leaves life gentle. She still wakes, sometimes gasping, lungs remembering old smoke. Her skin aches on cold mornings, scars tightening like warnings from the past. She can't light a candle without watching the flame too long. When a fire truck's siren wails outside, she stops breathing for a beat. Some wounds never fully heal, but they can build worlds, and the law that bears her influence has a name on it. The Safe Homes Act. And beside it the name of a girl who refused to let tragedy end in tragedy. Homes became safer. Fire codes became stricter. Emergency response improved. And thousands of children now sleep beneath windows that open because she once had one that didn't. She did not just survive fire. She forged her life inside it. But her greatest lesson wasn't policy. It was purpose. Sometimes the world breaks you open so you can light a path for others, and she lit one, brighter than the flames that tried to take her. Years passed. The new laws saved lives. Reports came in year after year, parents escaping in time, children pulled from danger before flames claimed breath. Statistics shifted. Fire deaths in vulnerable communities dropped. Inspectors no longer overlooked peeling wires or sealed windows. Landlords learned fear, not of fire, but of accountability. But she learned something else, something quieter and harder than any courtroom battle. When you survive a fire, you don't ever really leave it. It follows you, not as smoke or heat, but as memory. Some nights she woke before dawn and stood by her window, watching city lights blink against night. She placed her hand against the glass, openable now, safe, and felt both gratitude and grief. The window she once couldn't open had become the door to her life's purpose. She built a foundation in her mother's name, one that funded fire escape drills in underserved neighborhoods, helped families fight neglectful landlords, and paid for smoke detectors in homes that needed them most. At fundraisers, she spoke not like a politician, but like someone who remembered the taste of smoke in her throat. I didn't survive to be a symbol, she would say. I survived to be a warning. And then, to be a solution. Children who once only knew her as the girl who jumped now knew her as the woman who stood. Schools invited her. Fire chiefs thanked her. Mayors shook her hand. But the moment that changed her forever wasn't a headline. It wasn't a stage or a spotlight, it was a letter. A simple envelope in the mail. No return address. Handwritten, shaky script across the front. Inside, a short note. My son woke to smoke at 2 a.m. last month. He opened the window you made mandatory. He survived. I don't know you, but I owe you everything. Thank you. Attached was a drawing. A crayon fire truck, a stick figure family holding hands, a small house with an open window and stars in the sky. She held that paper like glass. And she cried, deep, shaking, grateful tears the world would never see. Not because she needed praise, but because she needed proof that her pain had meaning. She returned one quiet afternoon to the place where her story began. The building had changed, renovated, safer, brighter, but the memory lived in the walls. She stood at the base of the old window, the height still intimidating. Her healed bones remembering impact. A neighbor noticed her, older now, hair gray, face lined with years. You did good, he whispered softly. Your mama would be proud. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat too full of emotion to carry sound. Survivors don't always need applause. Sometimes they just need witness. She placed a single flower under the window. For her mother. For every life lost in silence before laws changed. For every child who now jumps not because they must, but because they practice safety drills she helped create. And as she walked away, the wind rustled like quiet applause only she could hear. Cinematic closing narration. Sometimes heroes don't wear medals. Sometimes they wear scars. Sometimes justice isn't handed down from powerful men in suits. It is carved by the hands of a child who crawled through smoke and decided the world must do better. She didn't ask to be chosen by tragedy. But she chose what to do with it, and because she did, Windows open, alarms sound, children live, families stay whole, and fire doesn't always win. Her story started with flames, but it ended with light, not the kind that burns, the kind that saves, because one girl jumped. Millions never have to.